So the smash hit Vampire Survivors has finally arrived on Switch, and it's a phenomenal game which has seen success across all platforms and has been extremely influential in popularising the roguelike subgenre known to many as reverse bullet hells or bullet havens. Since its release, there's been an influx of Vampire Survivor likes, and while many of these may have flown under the radar, the Switch has already had its fair share of them. And so today on the channel, we're going to be taking a look at my selection of the best, based on both my own experience of the featured games, as well as the opinions of others. My name's Luke, welcome back to Switch Stars, and join me as we dive into 13 of the best Vampire Survivor likes on the Nintendo Switch. So let's kick things off then with the OG dog itself, though admittedly the developer has admitted to being inspired in part by Magic Survival, an auto-shooter roguelike released in 2019 for Android mobile devices. Vampire Survivors though is as addictive as it is simple. You're tasked with surviving for 30 minutes against growing waves of ever more powerful enemies, collecting weapons and relics to aid you in your efforts, and collecting XP and opening slot machine style chests to upgrade them. It's incredibly satisfying, and like other roguelikes it has that one more try draw about it, which just sucks you right back in, run after run. Beyond this simple and highly addictive gameplay loop though lies a surprising amount of depth, and the game's unlocks are undoubtedly one of its biggest draws, as each run sees you earning gold which can then be used to unlock new character classes, each with their own perks and weaknesses, or alternatively be spent on permanent upgrades, allowing you to push deeper into runs and eventually take down the dreaded Grim Reaper. It should be noted though that there's almost no hand-holding in Vampire Survivors, and players are encouraged to experiment with different weapon combinations to discover their evolutions, fully explore levels to seek out the hidden secrets, and grind out those challenges to unlock new levels and hidden characters. From a visual perspective, the game may look dull at times, or at other times utterly overwhelming and chaotic, but don't let its simple sprite-based art direction deceive you, as once it sinks its teeth in, there's no letting go. Next up on our list is Spirit Hunter's Infinite Horde, and to a certain extent this one is kind of a Vampire Survivors easy mode, in that the early game runs are a little more forgiving and there's a little more explanation given to its mechanics, so it's the perfect entry game into the genre. Like most of the games in today's list though, gameplay follows a similar premise: battle back against hordes of enemies, grab XP to level up your weapons, and try to survive for as long as possible, though each run lasts about 20 minutes and culminates in a boss fight, which upon defeat ends the run. The progression system in this one is also very different. Instead of having a basic upgrade screen, you're given a web of nodes to work through, each of which either provides global stat boosts, unlocks new weapons or characters, or a variety of mods which transform the functionality of existing weapons and new level layouts. But each character in the game also provides its own unique perk, adding additional functionality to weapons. In addition to the basic gameplay loop, there are also challenges to complete which limit you to using specific weapon sets, and each stage comes in multiple difficulties, which really ups the ante and offers additional layers of replayability to the game. Overall though, a great alternative to Vampire Survivors, especially for those looking to be eased into the genre before progressing to more challenging content. Our next game is Whispike Survivors, Sword of the Necromancer, a game which blends the roguelike survival aspects of Vampire Survivors with that of a farming sim, as you gather up the seeds of your enemies before planting and nurturing them into fully fledged monsters who can then be taken into battle. Each of your monsters comes with its own unique attributes which determine the kind of attacks it performs, and as with the other games in this list, these abilities are leveled up during runs by collecting XP, with the usual survive for as long as possible formula in play. But planting specific monsters next to each other results in new hybrid monsters being formed, and this unique mechanic of combining different monsters makes for an interesting progression system. While the basic gameplay mechanics don't stray too far from your standard Vampire Survivors formula, the farming aspects certainly put a new and unique spin on things, and it's well worth taking a look at. Now when it comes to simplifying down the formula, Last Mage Survivors looks to be a kind of Vampire Survivors light version. Each run begins with you selecting your starter spell with a variety of different spells unlocked through the in-game currency, and then you're simply tasked with surviving for 20 minutes with growing hordes of enemies thrown at you and XP to collect to add to your arsenal of weapons and level them up. This isn't one that I've personally played myself, but from what I could tell there's not too much else going on in terms of gameplay, no additional characters or secrets to unlock, but there are a selection of power-ups to improve your character with, and the spells offer at least a little bit of variety. For the content though, the game is rather pricey considering Vampire Survivors can be picked up for only $5, but if you're looking for a less complicated alternative, then it might be worth grabbing in a sale. Up next we have Brotato, a game which I recently had the pleasure of playing and one which bridges the gap between the auto-shooting antics of Vampire Survivors and those found in more traditional twin-stick shooters. After selecting from a wide assortment of potato people, each with their own unique starter weapons and perks, you'll then be thrown into a small arena and have to fight through wave after wave of enemies, each lasting 30 seconds, after which you'll get to select from one of several upgrades and be taken to a shop where you can purchase additional upgrades and weapons. Rather than having different abilities though, the game is focused around melee and ranged weapons, with everything from pistols, swords and machine guns on display, to rocket launchers, miniguns and even exploding planks of wood, and you can equip up to 6 of these bad boys at one time. It's a challenging game to say the least, and each character brings its own unique playstyle, with a huge selection of passive upgrades to purchase during runs, and plenty of unlocks to work towards with this one. Overall though, a fantastic melding of mechanics on offer, and well worth a play. Prototype is our next game, and a mobile port in which you play as an experimental monster, in each run mutating yourself to develop new attacks and battle back against overwhelming numbers of enemies. Similar to Brotato, runs consist of individual rounds as you fight to survive against each wave of enemies, but rather than XP you'll be collecting cells from defeated enemies to mutate your monster in different ways. These mutations not only transform its appearance but also its combat abilities, with each organ you develop able to be linked to a different attack, and there are over 80 different organs for you to mix and match, giving you near infinite amounts of combinations to play with. Again, not as complex as Vampire Survivors, but the game has over 20 different characters for you to work towards unlocking, each with their own unique perks, so a decent amount of replayability, and some cool looking visuals to boot. The first of a couple of games taking Vampire Survivors to the third dimension then is Army of Ruin, a 3D bullet haven title which pits 3 heroes, a mage, a ranger and a warrior, against copious amounts of enemies, with each character having its own unique arsenal of abilities and tide-turning special moves. Much like Spirit Hunters, runs in Army of Ruin are comprised of several waves of enemies followed by a final boss wave, and throughout the run you'll be collecting experience gems to level up your character, selecting new abilities for them, and bolstering others through an assortment of trinkets. The game runs and looks pretty decent on the Switch, with both quality and performance modes on offer, though it does take a knock to the number of on-screen enemies when compared to the Steam version. But there are a bunch of different upgrades to work towards, multiple stages to select from, and a wide range of modifiers to change up the gameplay with. All round a great option, especially if you're looking for something with a few more pixels. So our second 3D VS-like today is Halftime Heroes, a game with 6 different classes to choose from, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, including the Mage, the Warrior, the Cleric and the Monk, 4 different levels, and a few different modifiers to change up the gameplay. Unlike Vampire Survivors though, their levels are large arena-like areas, and the gameplay looks to be a lot slower paced, with smaller numbers of enemies thrown at you, so it looks to be a good one if you're just getting into the genre, or have kids who need something tamer to get them started. Overall though, gameplay follows a similar format: kill enemies, collect experience and level up your abilities as you attempt to survive for as long as possible. The game does look to suffer from performance issues at times, but again, it's another budget offering coming in at under $5, so might be worth a punt. So Legion of Doom is a game that I've previously reviewed on the channel, and another one which takes a lot from its influencer, but also does just enough to separate itself, adding in a unique selection of weapons for each of its 5 characters, as well as traits which can be applied to any of them, granting both positive and negative bonuses. Each of these characters present their own unique playstyles and offer up a decent amount of variety to runs. However, the character pool in Legion of Doom is a little limited, as are the arenas, with there being only 3 to select from, each of which is rather small and has boundaries. Despite these limitations though, the gameplay in this one is still enjoyable, and it simplifies stuff enough to be accessible whilst also providing a reasonable amount of depth, and I'd say that it works best as a mid-tier time filler game, and is also reasonably priced at under $5. So Void Scrappers is a game that I've actually played quite a bit of, but not yet managed to get a review out for, and this is one that ditches the sword and sorcery for a more futuristic aesthetic, having you pilot a variety of different ships in a battle against an armada of enemy spacecraft. After selecting from one of 7 different characters, each with their own specialisations, you'll then be dropped into the vast void of space and set upon by wave after wave of enemies, with your arsenal consisting of projectile and laser based weapons, as well as explosives and orbitals. And as you gather up the scraps from downed enemies, you'll combine these weapons into more powerful versions. Unlike many of the games in this list, dodging also plays a vital role in the game, as do shields, allowing you to avoid taking damage, as rather than a health bar, you actually have lives in this one. But after a set period of time, you'll then face off against a boss, and defeating these rewards crates containing powerful perks and upgrades. But as with other games, the main objective is to survive for as long as possible. A ton of upgrades to unlock in this one, and a unique and interesting spin on the genre. Deathstate Abyssal Edition is a vibrant and bloody journey into the abyss, as you explore the void, descending through its layers as one of 10 different characters, and this is a game that kind of looks to bridge the gap between Vampire Survivors and a more traditional roguelike such as The Binding of Isaac. Rather than your usual arena survival setup, each run has you jumping into different dimensions, battling through unique enemy sets and defeating powerful bosses. Along the way, collecting weapons, relics, grimoires and organs, which in addition to the auto shooting mechanics provide you with a wide assortment of active special abilities. The game comes with a few different game modes, adding additional layers of difficulty, and again, dodging plays a key role in this one. But there's a huge amount of replayability, and the mixture of genres definitely offer a different kind of gameplay experience. Our penultimate game in today's roundup is Monster Destroyer, a game which is definitely lacking the same level of polish as some of the other titles mentioned here today, but could definitely serve as a budget-friendly entry-level VS game and one that kids might enjoy. I'm not gonna lie though, the publisher of this game has released copious amounts of crap onto the store, and Monster Destroyer definitely looks like a game that has been strung together using store-bought assets and most probably a store-bought Survivors engine. But it works, which is something I suppose. The game has an upgrade system using in-game currency, which I'm led to believe is incredibly expensive, and you're definitely getting a better deal with the real Vampire Survivors, but it's one to consider if you can pick it up for £1 or so on sale. Rounding off today's list then, we have Mighty Mage, and this is another low budget VS-like which looks to play more like an arcade title rather than a true Survivors experience. The game features a single small arena and tasks you with fighting through individual waves of enemies, between which you'll get to select from an assortment of weapons and upgrades, with you able to equip up to 5 weapons at once. The visuals are very rudimentary and almost SNES-like in their appearance, and both enemy variety and weapon variety is somewhat limited, but it's another one that is probably more suitable for a younger audience, and is probably best picked up in a sale. And that, my friends, is it. Vampire Survivors plus 12 games like it, which you can enjoy right now on the Nintendo Switch. So let me know if you played any of these down in the comments section below, how you found them, and if I've missed anything off the list, drop a comment and I'll be sure to add it to the pinned comment down below. For now though, drop a like if this one helped you out, check out my other top lists for more recommendations, and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all my latest content. Until next time though, thanks once again for watching, take care of yourselves, and game on.